If you have some extra cash savings, should you use that money to pay off the debt on your home, or should you save that for rental properties? That's the question a lot of us have, and we're going to tackle it in today's episode of Ask Coach. And we're starting right now. Hi, I'm Chad Carson. I also go by Coach. This channel is all about helping you invest in real estate so you can achieve financial independence and do more of what matters in your life. I'm going to take you now to a clip from a Ask Coach live stream, and let me give you a little bit of context and background of the question that somebody submitted to me. The person who asked the question is a couple, so a married couple. They have 2 kids, and they made about $90,000 per year between them. And sort of the dilemma they were in, they've been aggressively paying down the mortgage on their home to the tune of about $16,000 per year, which is the extra amount of money they can save every year. And so they're not uncomfortable with that decision to do that. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but they're sort of the dilemma for them is they're also interested in getting into real estate investing and buying a rental property. And so the question is, should you put that $16,000 towards paying down their debt? And just to give you some context on the numbers, I think they have a house that's worth about $230,000, and they have a debt of about $130,000. So, over $100,000 or more in equity on this property. And they want to know, should I be paying down that mortgage aggressively, or should I be saving that money for a rental property given their situation? So I'm going to take you to that clip now and let you know what my response was. The plan A, in terms of if you're just trying to optimize for growth, so you're trying to get your portfolio as big as possible so that it supports you for as long as possible. The plan A is to set aside that money and try to buy rental properties with it, or some other kind of investment. The reason being, now I'm going to give you an alternative response to that as well, just in case that's not your answer. But the reason being is that you're typically paying off a mortgage 3, 4, 5% on your home, and whereas if you could go invest that, if you could find good investments, and that's an important if, but if you can find good rental property investments and use some leverage on those properties, it's very reasonable to think you could get an overall return of 8, 10, 12, even higher. I've definitely gotten in the 20s and 30s with a lot of leverage. And so, you could get a higher return on that money. And when you're in the growth phase, one of your most important considerations is recycling your money and investing it in things that can grow as fast as possible without risking the house. And so here's the alternative. So I say that, and I say investing in rental properties would be the most optimized way. But I'll also point out that it's very clear, and this study after study shows that our investors' psychology, both as rental property investors, stock investors, whatever, is probably the biggest factor in whether we're going to be successful or not. So what we think and how we feel emotionally about the strategy that we're using is a significant factor, because it's what's going to either keep you in the game and keep you investing long run and sticking to the plan, or it's not. And so my response to this question about whether they should use the money to pay off their own debt on their house, or whether they should save it and keep the mortgage and then buy some more rental properties with more leverage, is a risk tolerance question. I would ask you, how do you feel about having this mortgage out there for the next 5 to 10 years while you're investing more money in real estate using leverage? Does that terrify you and keep you up at night? Because if you can't handle that, if that's stressful to you, then it's reasonable, because he going at the pace he's paying off his property, he might be paid off in 3 years or so. He's aggressively paying this loan down. So is it reasonable to think if you were most comfortable with just getting this loan paid down, and 3 years later you'd own your home free and clear, you'd always have a house over your head, and now you freed up a lot of cash flow that you can then go invest some more? Yes, you've lost 3 years of compounding, potentially you've lost some deals. But again, investor psychology is the most important thing. So you need to have a foundation of feeling comfortable with your strategy. And I know people, in the book, I mentioned the book earlier, I profiled 24 other people who've used real estate to retire early. And it was across the board, the different strategies they use with debt like this. My one friend, Rich Carey, who I featured in the book, has invested with 0 debt. He's always bought rental properties, and he paid off his home. And have always had his properties free and clear. He doesn't use debt to borrow more money and to grow more properties. He just pays the property off. He saves all the cash flow. He saves money from his job, and he buys another property. and then they saves more money, piles it up, buys another property. And yes, it's very slow and steady at first, but it's also low risk. There's not a lot that can happen. I remember a quote from a mentor of mine early on who always said, you know what, Chad, it's hard to fall off the floor. It's hard to fall off the floor, meaning like when you're on the floor with like very low risk, it's really hard to fall off. Like, yes, the worst case scenario is that you go slower, you take longer to get there. But when I've done the modeling and the math, yes, like the all cash plan starts off slower, but it actually like accelerates later on. And if you're psychologically, if that helps you and that's the approach you want to take, then I say go for it. Like I don't think there's a like cookie cutter that fits for everybody. The optimized growth, if you're okay with it, is to keep more leverage right now, reinvest that money. That's what I've done typically. But I'm now at a phase where risk is more important to me. Like reducing risk is more important than growing more. And so I'm more about paying down debt strategically. I still have some mortgages on properties. I still have a long way to go in terms I'm 38 years old. So I have a long growth horizon that I want to cover a lot of contingencies in the future. So I'm not as aggressive in paying down debt as maybe some people are, but I'm a lot more paid off. Like I've paid off properties and then kept mortgages on others to reduce my overall loan to value on my portfolio. So I think once you reach a certain plateau along the way, it's reasonable to start paying debt off. So that's my response to the question of whether they should use their cash that personally to buy another property right now or to pay off their home. And if you're still on the fence about that, what you can do, something I've done before, is like instead of using that money right now to pay off your home, set the money aside in an account for the next year. So, or maybe 2 years. You're going to lose a little bit of like interest that you're paying on your mortgage, but you could just set it aside and then you could do either one. And then you might go out and start searching for a rental property. And if you find a really solid deal that is going to be safe and is going to get a good return, then maybe you invest your cash in it. If you can't find anything for the next year or two, if just the market's so crazy you can't do it, or just you're not in a good place to find a rental property, you could always go take that money and still pay off the debt on your house. So I like that idea of just setting that money aside in a savings account. Don't touch it, and then let your actions and let the market decide for you how successful that strategy will be. Thanks for watching this episode of Ask Coach TV. What would you do in that situation? If you had some extra cash savings, would you use that to pay down the debt on your principal residence? Or would you use that cash to save it for your next rental property? There's no right or wrongs here, right? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Find out what you would do in your situation and why you would do that. And if you're new to this channel, I hope you'll subscribe, follow along with me. You can just click down below, either click subscribe or like, and you'll get all the next videos that I have, and I have a lot of fun stuff coming to you in the future. And if you want to watch some of our other videos that I've made in the past, you can just look through the library there, and I've got a lot of topics on financial independence and investing in real estate. So again, I appreciate you being here. This channel is all about investing in real estate so you can achieve financial independence and do more of what matters in your life. I'm Chad Carson. I go by Coach, and I'll see you next time.